Hi, I'm Paul from Test Data Services, and this video is a real-world walkthrough of the tests I use to test Test Data Services. So I'm starting off with a brand new install here of Windows. I've just opened up postman.com and I'm going to download Postman. And I'm going to do this so that you can follow along because I'm using Postman myself. Download 64-bit. I use Postman for my testing, and I've published the collections that I use, so we can actually walk through 4 of those right now. So if you are familiar with Postman or not, you might still learn something, but the way I do things in my Postman collections might be a bit different to you. I've put a lot of test assertions in there, which I think are really great. Let me know in the comments if you think they're great or if you think I need to add lots to it. But anyway, this is what I've got. This is what I'm using for real. So we've just hit the install and I've got 4 collections here. These are in the description below and we'll step through each of them. We'll do the MFA one first, and this shouldn't take much longer. So I just suggest that you install Postman yourself on your own machine if you haven't already. And we're going to go straight to the app. We're going to import, and I'll just copy this link here, paste, import. So now I have imported a collection. So now I can see that collection there. Now I need to create an environment. So let's do a new environment and let's just call it test for the sake of a nice easy word to use. And let's select test. You need an environment because we have variables in these collections. So in here we've got 5 calls. The first one we're going to do is we're going to do this call to Test Data Services, make Google Auth secret. Now this is the secret that you would get from an app when you're doing an MFA setup. And in each of these requests, we have tests. So these are the tests that we've got in here. Let's make this a bit bigger so that we can, or maybe that's too big, it doesn't really matter. We can see we've got a globals setting so that we're using the subscription key, which I've published on Test Data Service website, that anyone can use. It's rate limited. If everyone uses it a lot, we'll have issues. But for the sake of a learning process, this will normally work. Then what that request does is it sends a request off to make Google Auth secret, and the response for that is accessible via this Postman response JSON call. When we do that, it loads into a JSON variable which we've just declared called JSON data. I can then take that JSON data call and I can extract out the secret, this token, next token, and seconds remaining. And this is the response here. So you can see that was the secret, this token, next token, and seconds remaining. So now these variables are available to us. I now set that with this environment set so that secret A is this one here, secret A, and tokens A is that token. So I then am able to, in subsequent steps, make use of that. I have 3 test assertions in here. So I have a check to make sure I get a HTTP 200 response. I have a check to make sure I get a token returned, and I have a check to make sure it doesn't take too long. It takes 2000 milliseconds. Next step, or the next request, is this one here to get a random person. So if I hit the send on that one, this is all the data that comes back. And what's happening in the test tab is this. We are grabbing the response again, and we're getting the UID of the person, and we're getting the email address of that identity or that person. And that UID is down here, and the email address is here. So this is Daniel Amos. And we set these environment variables here as well, and we check that we get a 200 response, we've got a UID, and our response times are reasonable. Now, this is an MFA collection, so we want to test that if we have an MFA challenge, that we can actually put the MFA token in. You can have another look at a video where I explain it with a bit more detail and show you that it really works. But this call here is the one that we're using to save a secret against an email address. Now, this email A in curly braces is actually retrieving the value from email A that we saved in this step here. You note that we said save into email A, email, and we got email from here, Daniel Amos. So in this call, we're going to do an HTTP GET. We're passing these three query parameters, and we've got email A, we've got the subscription key, and we've got that secret, which was from the first step. If I hit send on that, now whenever we want to retrieve a token, all we do is do the get Google auth code. We pass in the email address and we pass in the subscription key. And that's so that if you do this or someone else does this with a different subscription, there's no overlap. And for the sake of things, you can actually create extra subscriptions with the subscription. So you can create a subscription and then make sure no one can collide with your data. When we do this call, we get a token back, and we see this token, next token, and a time in the test assertions area. We can see that we're looking at what this token is and next token is. And then in the subsequent call, we do a direct call to make Google auth secret, and we pass in a secret, which means it'll actually tell us what this token is, what next token is, and how long there is before it, so that in the assertions in here, we actually check that the values that we got are what we expect. So that's the first collection. Let's go through and do the next one. Let's look at tagging. So each of these collections does a little bit more in the assertions. So we're going to import from a link. We paste the link in, continue, import. So now we've got this one here, 28 tag test. Oh, by the way, I didn't show you. I meant to show you. In the collection section here, if we click this little right triangle, we can then hit run. And when we do this, we can run that whole test quickly. So you saw that ran fast. If we want, we can actually, we can run it again. We could, though, hit run, and instead of letting it run once, which is the default, we could let it run 10 times. And now it's actually running that set of transactions, that set of requests, those 5 requests, each of them 10 times. And there's 15 assertions in that whole collection. So we've run 150. So that's done it. And you can look at every one of those. You can go to the console log and you can look at each of those responses that have come back, which is quite useful. You can actually dig in and you can see what all the headers were, and you can see what the responses are, and so on. So that's pretty cool. This next one here, let's just push play on this and run it, and you'll see that if we run tag tests, it'll go through and do a whole stack of requests. And I'll then step through some of these so you can see what I'm doing, but I don't want to repeat myself too much. So let's look first, and we're going to check a subscription. So we're checking that subscription that we were using before. Oh, sorry, let's start over again. This check subscription status, it's passing in a subscription, which is the one that we used in the previous test. And this tells us for each of the types of subscriptions, so we've got email, tags, MFA, how many transactions we are allowed to do in the current 10-second window, in the current 5-minute window, in the current hour, and so on. What I'm going to do now is create a new subscription key based on that one, and I'm going to create a second subscription key. So I've created 2, A and B. In the test tab, we can see that I've actually saved new subscription B based on the subscription key that got returned. So I'm keeping track of them. I'm now showing you how a subscription variable can be saved. So it's like a global variable for a whole subscription. And in here, I have got a pre-request script. So I'm doing some setup in here to, in this case, get a random UID, and I'm setting an environment variable called global value, and I then make use of that. So that runs this code when I hit the send button immediately before submitting this get, and then after that it runs these test assertions, and each time it runs you'll notice it says test results 3 out of 3, so you can actually see if they all passed. If you had 2 out of 3, then that wouldn't be so good compared to 3 out of 3. So if I was to hit send again, we can see that they all succeed. And what this is doing is it's just checking that we've got 200, we've got a good response, and we've got a timely response. So what we're doing next though, and what that did was it was saving a tag and a value, and the tag was env and then some characters. So this is actually an example of if you wanted to save an environment, a variable that holds what environment you're pointing to, and this is a value for that environment, just as a made up thing, but that's just what it's doing. Now if I use a call to get that value, but I pass in as a query parameter subscription key A, I can check that I get the value, and I test in here that I actually get the value and it's correct. So I'm actually doing a test in here, an assertion. I'm expecting that the tag value is equal to the variable global value. So this is a way of me verifying that this value here is matching the value that we created over here, or that we got returned over here. And if we do it again in the next step, you can see that we get that same value back again, which is good. So we've passed in a different subscription key here and here, but we've got the same value back because it's showing it's a global setting. In the next step, we're getting a random person A, getting a random person B, we're getting a random person C, and we're saving some values in the process here so that we know who A, B, and C is. And then we're going to save a user ID for A, and a user ID for B, and a user ID for C. So far you've seen we've run a bunch of requests, and I'm actually checking that the code behind the scenes in Test Data Service is doing the right thing and returning the right results. So I've now saved some user IDs, and I'm going to get now I'm going to get a random user ID based on those saved ones. So the actual functional purpose of this is if you have a test environment and you create 5 logins for accessing that environment, and then you want to log in with one of those logins, you can use this save call. And then when you want to log on for each of the 5 you've set up, when you want to log in, you get a saved user ID. So every time I get one of these, it'll randomly give me one that was just saved. So I'm checking that it's in fact doing that. But I can also pop them. So when I pop them, it actually gives me back in the same sequence. And these test assertions in here are checking that I've got the correct one. I'm checking here that I've got an A1 in my response, for example. And I can pop the next one, and I can pop the next one. And if I don't have any data, there won't be any. I won't go through the rest of these now. I recycle and I do other things. You get the picture. The next one I'll do is I will do signing up to a website, because this is a little bit more interesting, because you can actually see the HTML responses. Like you can see a web page response in Postman. It's not just for API interactions. So if I do a new collection, I want to import, and import based on a link, paste the link in for the email Cognito public. I think it's the right one. And now in this collection, I'm randomly grabbing a person. I'm going to a Cognito web page. Now I'll show you what that looks like. I can do a preview. This is what the web page looks like. So it's a sign up page. You can put an email in, a birthday, address, gender, given name, family name, password, and hit the sign up button. So that's not really a strict API call, but it still works in Postman. Now what I'm doing is I'm clearing any messages that were sent earlier on to that person, and I'm submitting the details retrieved in this get random person. So that person's email address was Steve Britton, for example. I'm submitting all those details, and if I show you what that looks like, I now have a response back after submitting. We have sent a code by email to Steve Britton at testdata.email, and it wants me to enter a verification code in. So now I can get that verification code by reading the email address, and this is the data that's come back. And in here, you can see that we have your verification code is 365967. To show you how I extract that out, I have in here verification code equals email text substring code location plus 26 and code location plus 32. So I'm looking for a range of characters. I got that by looking at the email text, doing a search on it, and looking for the text your verification code is. So the combination of this step and this step allows me to fetch this verification code of 365967. I then do a set environment variable for verification code with that JavaScript variable so that it's set. So that means in this next request here, the body of this request, because it's a post, has in it a verification code. And if I mouse over that verification code, we can see it's 365967, which is great. So if I submit that now, it should work, and I should get a thank you, which is great. So this is an example of a Postman collection that actually interacts with a website, not just an API, but it uses Postman to be able to do that. And I'm actually, in this test, verifying that my email catching is working and that I'm able to catch emails and then submit them. And my proof that it works is that I've successfully signed up to a website, which I think is pretty cool. To show you that in normal speed, if I hit run, we can run it. And you'll note that we're actually waiting here. Now what we're doing is we're waiting for about 10 seconds to give it a chance to receive the email. And I'm hoping to receive the email within that 10 seconds. And once I've received the email, I know I'm good. So that wait is one of these steps. You can have a look at that separately. I won't use up more time to show you. The last one I want to show you is OpenID Connect. So the OpenID Connect one is the most sophisticated one that I've got. If I now import from a link, paste in this one, import. So if I have a look and find it, OpenID Connect. So there's 32 requests in this one. So it's actually quite substantial. What I'll do though is I'll run you through it real quick. You should watch the OpenID Connect videos to understand what OpenID Connect is, which is basically log in with Google or log in with Facebook. It's a federated authentication system which allows delegated access, and it's very popular. So I've now just registered an application. If you go through those other videos, you can understand what that is. I'm going to get a random identity. I'm going to push this identity. So go through those other videos to see that. I'm going to peek that identity, and I'm going to do an authorize. Now the reason I'm jumping through to here is to show you that when I do this authorize, I get this Java web token. So go back to that other video. I'll put a card up in the top there so you can see which one it is. This Java Web Token has embedded in it a number of claims. Those claims relate to this random person that we used to authenticate with. So what we want to do in this call is we want to check that those claims are correct. So in the tests section, we have some code to check that we actually we have the ID token where we want it. Now the way we do that is we get the data back from this payload, which is this data here, and raw ID token is the JSON data returned .id token. We then, I then console log it so I can see what it is. We then, in fact, let's look at the console for that. We have to scroll right down to the end. Raw ID token. So that's it here. You can see that. Then what we do is we set a variable for claims text equals buffer raw token array 1 base 64, and we do a base 64 to ASCII conversion on it. Then we do a console log of this claims text. So let's jump back to that. And that's the claims string, which is claims text. That's in here. So you can see in here that we've actually got the claims text, and you can see what the details are of that claims text. Let's go back to the person we selected, Janet Smitka at testdata.email. And if we go back to here, we can see that the email was for Janet Smitka. So what we're doing in this call, in the authorized call, in the tests for it, is we're checking that the email, claims.email, is equal to the environment variable email that we set when we grab this random person, which you can see in here, that we save the email address, we fetch the email address, and we set it so that it saves an environment variable called email. So you can see from this last Postman collection, I won't go through this because it's quite long, that we can actually do some quite clever JavaScript to actually inspect even Java Web Tokens and check that they're correct and they've got the right things. In this collection, I actually adjust claims, and I change things and add things and subtract things and verify that the authentication tokens resulting from those OpenID Connect calls actually do the right thing. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you stepped through these collections, and I hope that you enjoy using Postman like I have to validate the functional integrity of the system I've developed. Thanks. Have a great day.